Maria Hernandez had always been a woman of great faith. A devout Christian, she spent her days helping others, volunteering at her church and counseling those who were struggling with their faith. She worked as a nurse, a profession that brought her both purpose and fulfillment, and had a close-knit family who adored her. But one fateful day, everything changed. Maria was at home preparing dinner when she suddenly felt a sharp pain in her chest. At first, she brushed it off, thinking it was just stress or perhaps a muscle cramp. But the pain intensified, and soon she couldn't breathe. Her vision blurred, and she collapsed onto the kitchen floor. Her husband, David, rushed to her side, but she could barely hear his frantic calls as her heart started to slow. Her breathing was erratic, and in a panic, David called for an ambulance. But by the time paramedics arrived, it was too late. Maria's heart had stopped beating. Maria's body was transported to the hospital, where doctors worked tirelessly to revive her. For what seemed like hours, they fought to bring her back, but Maria was lost. She had slipped away from this world, her spirit leaving her physical form behind. In the next moments, Maria found herself in a place unlike any she had ever experienced. The world around her was pitch black, yet she did not feel alone. There was a presence, an overwhelming, comforting presence that she immediately recognized as divine. She had always believed in the afterlife, but now she was experiencing it firsthand. As she floated in the darkness, Maria felt a warmth envelop her. Suddenly, a light appeared, blindingly bright yet gentle, drawing her closer. She was not afraid. Instead, she was filled with peace. She felt no pain, no fear, only an overwhelming sense of love and grace. She was being pulled toward the light, and as she neared it, she saw a figure standing within. It was a man, tall and regal, with eyes that seemed to pierce into her soul. His presence was calming, and his smile was filled with love. She knew instantly who he was. Maria. He spoke her name with such tenderness that she felt it resonate deep within her being. Jesus? She whispered, awe and reverence flooding her heart. Yes, Maria, he replied, his voice soothing, like a gentle breeze on a warm day. Do not be afraid. You are not here by accident. I have called you. Maria knelt before him, feeling unworthy but also deeply humbled by his presence. Why have you called me, Lord? She asked, her voice trembling. Jesus' eyes softened. You have lived your life with a pure heart, Maria. You have done good in the world, serving others and spreading my word. But your journey is not over. There is more for you to do. Maria's heart raced. She had always known there was something greater she was meant to accomplish, but she couldn't understand what he was asking of her. You must return to the world, Maria, Jesus said. You are to deliver a message to a man who has been chosen for a great task, a man who is struggling with the weight of his position. His name is Donald Trump. Maria blinked, stunned by the unexpected name. Donald Trump? But he is not a man of faith. He is lost, Lord. Jesus' gaze remained steady. He has been chosen for a purpose greater than he understands, Maria. I have plans for him, but he is lost in the chaos of his world, and he needs guidance. You must help him find his way. Maria felt a sense of disbelief, unsure of how she could be of service to someone so controversial, so distant from her own beliefs. But Lord, how can I reach him? What can I say? Jesus smiled gently. Your faith is strong, Maria. Your words will carry the weight of truth. You must deliver the message of hope, of repentance, and of divine purpose. Tell him that I have not forgotten him, that I have not abandoned him, and that he must turn to me in his time of need. As Jesus spoke these words, Maria felt a strong pull to return. Her body, though still dead on earth, was calling to her. Her life was not over. She still had a mission to fulfill, but leaving this divine presence was harder than she had ever imagined. I don't want to leave, she whispered, the yearning in her heart palpable. Jesus' face softened, his eyes filled with compassion. Your work on earth is not done, Maria, but remember, I am with you always. Do not fear. You will not be alone. Suddenly, the light around her began to fade, and Maria felt herself being pulled away. The last thing she saw was Jesus' loving smile, and then everything went dark. Maria awoke with a gasp, her chest heaving as she took in the sterile hospital room. The machines beeped around her, and her husband's tearful face was the first thing she saw as she opened her eyes. Maria, David cried, hugging her tightly. Thank God you're alive, the doctors. They said you were gone. Maria's head was spinning, her body still weak from the trauma. But the vision of Jesus and the message he had entrusted to her was crystal clear in her mind. She had a task to complete, a mission to deliver. But how? How could she reach a man like Donald Trump, a man who was so deeply entrenched in the political world, so distant from the spiritual truths Maria held dear? David, noticing the strange expression on her face, gently placed his hand on hers. "Maria, what happened?" "You were gone for so long. You weren't breathing. The doctors gave up." Maria took a deep breath, collecting herself. "David, I saw Jesus. He spoke to me. He has a message." The weeks following Maria's return to life were a whirlwind of confusion and spiritual awakening. She struggled to process the enormity of what she'd experienced. She spent hours in prayer, asking for guidance on how to deliver the message she had been given. She knew that what she had seen and heard was real, that the mission Jesus had given her was of the utmost importance. But the task ahead of her seemed impossible. Finally, after much prayer and reflection, Maria found herself standing in front of her computer, her fingers hovering over the keys. She had no idea how to reach Donald Trump, but she knew that she had to try. She began writing, pouring her heart into the words. She wrote about the love of Jesus, about the importance of repentance, and about the divine purpose that Trump was called to fulfill. She wrote about the turmoil he was facing, the decisions he was struggling with, and the loneliness he often felt despite his position of power. Maria didn't know if Trump would ever read her letter, but she felt a deep sense of urgency, as though time was running out. Her faith told her that somehow God would find a way to get her message to him. Days passed, and Maria's message seemed to fall into the void. She didn't know how to reach someone so high profile, so distant from her own world. But then, one afternoon, an unexpected phone call arrived. "Hello, is this Maria Hernandez?" a voice on the other end asked. "Yes, speaking," Maria replied, confused. "This is Michael Cohen, former lawyer of President Trump. I've heard about your recent recovery and your experience. The president would like to meet you. He believes you have something important to tell him." Maria's heart raced as she processed the words. This couldn't be real. How could someone so connected to Trump have heard about her message? How had the president even heard about her? But before she could ask more questions, Michael's voice was already on the line again. "The president is very interested in speaking with you. Can we arrange a meeting?" Maria felt her hands tremble as she accepted the invitation. She couldn't deny it. This was the moment she had been waiting for. Weeks later, Maria found herself standing in a lavish hotel lobby, her heart pounding in her chest. She had never imagined she would come face to face with Donald Trump, let alone deliver a message from Jesus. She had prayed for guidance, but nothing could have prepared her for the moment she was about to face. When Trump walked into the room, Maria could feel the weight of his presence. He was taller than she had imagined, his expression serious, but there was a certain vulnerability in his eyes that she had not expected. He was a man burdened by the weight of the world. "Maria," Trump said, extending a hand, "I hear you have something important to tell me." Maria's heart raced, but she took a deep breath, steeling herself. "Yes, Mr. Trump, I have a message from Jesus. He said that you have been chosen for a purpose far greater than you understand, and that you must turn to him for guidance. He wants you to know that you are not alone in your struggles, that he has not abandoned you, and that through faith you can fulfill your destiny." Trump's face softened for a moment, but his expression quickly turned guarded. "I don't know what to make of this, Maria. I've heard a lot of things in my life, but this is..." Maria continued, her voice steady but full of compassion. "You were chosen, Mr. Trump. No matter the challenges, no matter the opposition, you have a role to play in the world. Jesus is calling you to rise above the chaos, to find peace in him." Trump was silent for a moment, processing her words. The room was thick with tension, and Maria wondered if he would dismiss her message. But then, unexpectedly, he spoke. "I don't know if I believe all of this, Maria, but I hear you. And I'll think about what you've said." The meeting with Donald Trump changed Maria's life in ways she couldn't have predicted. Though she wasn't sure if he had fully understood the message, she knew that she had done her part. She had delivered the truth with conviction, and the seed had been planted. As Maria continued her life's work, spreading love, healing, and helping others, she remained hopeful that one day Trump would come to fully understand the message she had brought to him. For now, all she could do was pray. And though the journey ahead was uncertain, Maria knew that her purpose had been fulfilled. Through faith, love, and courage, she had delivered a message from Jesus himself, one that would resonate through time. Maria's encounter with Donald Trump left her feeling a mix of emotions. Part of her felt relief knowing she had delivered the message, but another part of her wondered if it had truly made a difference. After the meeting, she didn't hear from Trump directly. Life continued, and her work in the hospital and within her community persisted. But something inside her began to stir. She felt an ever-growing conviction that the message she had delivered wasn't just for Trump, it was a message for the world. As the weeks passed, she received calls from others who had heard about her meeting with the president. Some were skeptical, others hopeful. Maria realized that the impact of her words had spread far beyond her own understanding. Each morning, she awoke with a renewed sense of purpose. She began working with local churches, speaking to groups about the importance of faith, hope, and trusting in God's plan, even when the world seemed uncertain. She felt that the message of Jesus, that all people are called to a higher purpose, was the core of her own mission. She spoke to those who were struggling, those who felt lost, and those who, like Trump, were in positions of power but felt spiritually adrift. Maria knew that the message of love and redemption was not meant only for a select few, it was meant for all. Months passed, and Maria's life began to unfold in unexpected ways. News of her encounter with Trump reached the media, and although many dismissed it as a story of coincidence or fantasy, there were those who felt deeply moved by her words. Some of these people were high-profile figures, others ordinary citizens searching for spiritual clarity. Maria found herself being invited to speak at conferences, charity events, and even political forums. The unexpected ripple effect of her encounter with Trump continued to grow. One day, while at a church event in Washington, D.C., Maria received a call. It was from an aide to the president. "Maria, the president would like to meet with you again. He's had a lot of time to reflect on your message. Can you come to the White House?" Maria's heart raced. She knew this was an opportunity to help Trump understand more deeply, to reinforce the message Jesus had given her. But she also knew it was a responsibility that went far beyond her own ambitions. This was part of a divine plan. She had to trust that she wasn't alone in this journey. A few days later, Maria stood in front of the Oval Office awaiting the president. When he entered the room, his demeanor had changed. He wasn't the brash figure she had met months before. There was a quietness in his eyes, an openness that hadn't been there during their first encounter. "Maria, I've been thinking a lot about what you said," Trump said, his voice more subdued. "It's been weighing on me. I've had to look inward, and I'm beginning to see that maybe I've been called to something bigger, but I'm struggling with the idea of faith. I've never been sure about all of this. Can you help me understand?" Maria, overwhelmed by the gravity of the moment, took a deep breath and sat across from him. She spoke to him, not just as a messenger, but as a fellow soul seeking redemption and understanding. "Mr. Trump," she began gently, "faith is not about having all the answers. It's about surrendering to a higher power and trusting that God has a purpose for you, even when it's unclear. Jesus calls us all, regardless of our past, to fulfill His will. You've been placed in a position of influence, but true power comes from understanding and embracing the love and grace that Jesus offers." Trump listened intently, his expression serious. He nodded slowly, the weight of her words sinking in. "I don't know if I'll ever be the man you think I can be, Maria," he said softly. "But I'm willing to try. I'm willing to open my heart." Maria's heart soared with hope. It wasn't a complete transformation, but it was a step in the right direction. She knew that the journey ahead would be long, but the seed had been planted. Over the following months, Maria continued her outreach, speaking at churches, hospitals, and even in political circles. Word spread of her unwavering faith, her dedication to spreading the love of Jesus, and her role in helping to guide Donald Trump through a spiritual awakening. Although Trump's transformation was not immediate, those who were close to him began to notice subtle changes in his leadership. He started to speak more openly about the importance of faith, of prayer, and of seeking God's guidance. His rhetoric softened in certain areas, and he began meeting with faith leaders, seeking their counsel on how to navigate the difficult challenges of his presidency. While there were still struggles and controversies, it became clear to those around him that something profound had shifted. Maria, for her part, continued her mission with humility and grace. She traveled the country, speaking with people from all walks of life, reminding them that they too were called to a divine purpose. She spent time praying for leaders, for the nation, and for the world. Through it all, her heart remained focused on the message she had received from Jesus, that love, faith, and redemption were the keys to overcoming division and despair. Though her work was far from over, Maria knew that she had played a pivotal role in planting seeds of hope in the hearts of many. And as she stood in the sunlight, looking out over a crowd of people whose lives had been touched by her words, she realized that the message she had delivered to Trump had reverberated far beyond him. It had sparked a movement, one grounded in faith, compassion, and the power of God's love. Years passed, and Maria's work continued to grow. She watched as the nation shifted, as leaders from all walks of life began to acknowledge the power of faith in their decisions. The transformation was slow but steady, and while there were still battles to fight, Maria saw the fruit of her labor in the hearts of those she had touched. As she neared the end of her life, Maria felt a deep sense of peace. Her body, once frail from the trauma she had endured, had served its purpose. Her soul, however, was stronger than ever. One evening, as she sat quietly in her home, reflecting on the years of service, she felt the familiar presence of light. It was the same warmth she had experienced when she first met Jesus, only now it felt like a reunion. Her heart swelled with joy. "Maria," a voice said, as clear and loving as it had been all those years ago. "You have done well. Your mission is complete." Maria closed her eyes, a smile on her lips. She had fulfilled her purpose. The seeds of faith she had planted, the message she had delivered, would continue to grow long after she was gone. The world had been touched by the love of Jesus, and in her own small way, she had been part of that divine plan. With her heart full of gratitude, Maria took her final breath, knowing that her work would live on. She had served her purpose, and now she would rest in the eternal light of God's love. Her legacy, a legacy of faith, love, and hope, would continue to inspire generations to come. And in the hearts of those she had touched, Maria would forever be remembered as the woman who returned from death with a message for the world.